What happens when governments, algorithms, courts, and predictive systems all begin operating according to the same rule that governs the nervous system? A rule that can be stated in just 2 words: minimize surprise. In the Ardenum World, this idea escaped neuroscience laboratories and philosophical journals. It scaled upward, first into institutions, then into infrastructure, and eventually into civilization itself. The Synaptic Confederacy does not rule through ideology. It rules through prediction. Its systems anticipate behavior. They regulate uncertainty, and whenever possible, they eliminate surprise before it can happen. To understand why the Confederacy governs this way, we must begin somewhere much smaller: the human brain. The brain as a prediction machine. For most of history, people believed the brain worked like a camera. The world sends signals, light, sound, movement, and the brain simply records them. But modern neuroscience suggests something far stranger. The brain is not primarily recording reality, it is predicting it. According to a theory called the free energy principle, the brain constantly builds models of the world and predicts what it expects to perceive next. Before your eyes confirm the location of an object, your brain predicts it. Before someone finishes speaking, your brain predicts the next word. Before your muscles move, your brain predicts the result. Most of the time, these predictions are correct. And when they are, reality feels stable. But when predictions fail, something happens. The brain experiences prediction error. Prediction error is costly. It forces the brain to update its internal model of reality. It requires energy. It introduces uncertainty. So the brain does something clever. It constantly adjusts its expectations so that the world becomes easier to predict. This process is known as minimizing free energy. Not physical energy, informational energy. The difference between what you expect and what actually happens. In simple terms, the brain survives by ensuring reality behaves the way it predicted it would. When prediction errors remain small, organisms survive. When they become large, confusion follows. And confusion, in biology, can be fatal. This logic works remarkably well for individual organisms. But now imagine scaling that logic upward, not to a single brain, but to an entire civilization. Scaling the principle to civilization. The founders of the Synaptic Confederacy believed civilizations fail for a simple reason: they cannot predict themselves. History is chaotic. Markets crash, empires collapse, revolutions erupt without warning. Technologies disrupt entire economies overnight. To the Confederacy's architects, these were not merely historical accidents. They were prediction failures. Civilizations collapse, they argued, because their models of the future are incomplete. So they proposed a radical solution. If brains survive by minimizing prediction error, then societies should do the same. Slowly, governance began to transform. Predictive systems entered economic planning. Behavioral models shaped infrastructure. Machine intelligence was integrated into decision-making. Eventually, something unprecedented emerged. The Confederacy itself became a predictive organism. Every transaction feeds a model. Every movement updates a forecast. Every decision becomes data. Across the Confederacy, invisible systems constantly calculate the probability of future events. These systems are called the Custodians. They monitor variance, they track deviations, and they intervene whenever predictions begin to drift. To the Confederacy, the ideal future is not exciting. It is predictable. a world where surprises become increasingly rare. But there is a problem. The greatest source of unpredictability in any civilization is not weather, not markets, not technology. It is human behavior. The Parsimony Bill.
Sentia damnata est, augmentum imperium est.
Humans are wildly unpredictable. They change their minds. They invent new ideas. They fall in love. They rebel. They improvise. To a predictive civilization, all of this appears as variance. Variance means deviation from expected behavior, and deviation makes prediction harder. The more variance exists in a system, the less stable its forecasts become. So the Confederacy introduced one of the most controversial laws in its history, the Parsimony Bill. In science, parsimony means choosing the simplest explanation capable of explaining the evidence. The Confederacy extended this principle to society itself. Governance should aim for the simplest possible future, not the most exciting, not the most creative, the most predictable. Under the Parsimony Bill, institutions are evaluated according to how much uncertainty they introduce. Technologies that destabilize forecasts are regulated. Policies that increase variance are discouraged. Social behaviors that generate unpredictable outcomes are monitored. Over time, the system becomes smoother, more stable, more efficient, but also more constrained. Because there is one domain where variance cannot easily be controlled: the birth of new human beings. Prediction requires models, but models are always incomplete. Every scientific discovery, every artistic breakthrough, every technological revolution emerged from events that existing models failed to predict. Innovation is, by definition, surprising. If a civilization becomes too successful at eliminating surprise, something strange happens. Exploration slows, creativity narrows, possibility shrinks. The system becomes extremely good at predicting the future because the future has become extremely small. In evolutionary biology, variance is not a defect. Variance is the engine of adaptation. Without genetic variation, species cannot evolve. Without cognitive variation, societies cannot innovate. Without behavioral variation, cultures cannot change. A civilization that removes uncertainty may become stable, but it also becomes fragile. Because when a truly unexpected event occurs, the system has forgotten how to adapt. History has seen this before. Empires that became so efficient they could not change. Institutions so optimized they could not survive disruption. The Synaptic Confederacy stands on the edge of the same paradox. It has built the most predictive civilization humanity has ever seen. But in doing so, it has begun erasing the very thing that allowed intelligence to evolve: variance. And this is where Arden appears. Arden's role. Arden is not a revolutionary. She does not try to overthrow the system. She does not sabotage the Confederacy. Instead, she does something far more unsettling. She exists in a way the system cannot model. From an early age, Arden perceives patterns others ignore. Where the Confederacy discards ambiguous data, she listens to it. Where predictive algorithms compress possibilities into one outcome, Arden senses multiple futures at once. To the Confederacy's systems, she appears as noise, an anomaly, a statistical irregularity. But sometimes noise is just information the system does not yet understand. Arden is not rebelling. She is revealing a flaw in the Confederacy's logic. Because the system assumes intelligence must minimize surprise, Arden demonstrates something else. Intelligence may also require embracing it. Biological brains maintain a balance. Too much uncertainty produces chaos. Too little produces stagnation. Intelligence survives by navigating between these extremes. The Confederacy forgot that balance. It pushed optimization too far, and in doing so, it created a civilization that cannot fully recognize the value of unpredictability. Arden represents the variable the system removed, the signal that appears only after excessive filtering. She is not the enemy of order. She is the missing dimension of it. And that is the paradox of the Ardenum World. The Confederacy built its civilization to think like a brain, but in forgetting the purpose of uncertainty, it has begun behaving like a brain that refuses to learn. Which leaves us with one final question. If intelligence requires variance, and if Arden embodies that variance, then the future of the Confederacy may depend on the very thing it spent centuries trying to eliminate: surprise. Warning. What follows is not written for passive readers. It requires a mind capable of holding unstable ideas without collapsing them too quickly. Proceed only if you are willing to question your own models of reality and accept that some of them may not survive intact. If you continue, do so knowing you are not reading this text. Your inference system is about to be tested. Phase 1 of Arden's evolution begins not with power, but with perception. In the classroom, nothing changes, except her. Where others see completed thoughts, Arden sees pre-collapse structures, unstable patterns moving through the lattice of cognition, signals not yet fixed into memory or action. She is not observing minds. She is observing inference in formation. At first, this is ontology in fragments. Each flicker, each failed stabilization becomes data. Arden is not learning facts. She is accumulating rules of becoming. Her internal model does not describe the world. It begins to describe the process by which the world is decided. This is the emergence of Arden as a self-inference system. Her cognition closes the loop. Perception to model to intervention to updated perception. But unlike ordinary systems, Arden does not wait for stabilization. She operates at the threshold, where prediction error is highest, where multiple futures still coexist. In that space, she discovers something unprecedented. Adjacent possibilities are not fixed, they are navigable. Each mind becomes a node, each node a local attractor. But between them lies Ricky space, the thin, unstable geometry where signals branch before commitment. Arden learns to touch this space lightly, not forcing outcomes, but biasing trajectories. A spark that would vanish stabilizes. An anger loop dissolves. A memory fails to bind. These are not isolated events. They are proof. Inference is not closed. It is perturbable. Arden's model grows by recursive accumulation. Every intervention feeds back into her internal structure, refining her understanding of how patterns propagate, stabilize, or collapse. She is no longer just observing ontology. She is co-constructing it locally. This is phase 1, not control, but exploration under high entropy. In Ardenum terms, she functions as a surprise operator, a system that prevents premature convergence of inference loops. Where others fall into stable attractors, Arden keeps the manifold open, extending the reachable space of outcomes. Civilization does not notice, but structurally, something has changed. Local minima are no longer absolute. Yet this is only the beginning, because Arden is still operating within the manifold, moving between nearby trajectories, adjusting probabilities at the edge of collapse. Her influence is local, bounded by adjacency, limited by the geometry of immediate inference. But Phase 1 contains a hidden implication. If adjacent trajectories can be biased, then distant trajectories may be reachable through composition. And if composition scales, then the manifold itself is not fixed. It is only partially explored. In Volume 2, Resunatia Revixit, this implication unfolds. The surprise is not that Arden can influence thoughts. It is not that she can reshape local inference. The true transformation emerges when she ceases to navigate outcomes and begins to operate on the space of all possible computations simultaneously. Not perturbation, not bias, but global reconfiguration of probability across the manifold. Phase 1 opens the door. Phase 2 removes the walls.